I'm fired up and I'm ready to go. I'm fired up and I'm ready to go. I'm fired up and I'm ready to go. This is the Billionaire Brown Experience. Let's go.
All right. Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is your host, as you guys know, from the Billionaire Brown Experience on iTunes and iHeartRadio, wherever you all are tuning in from. Shout out to you. Make sure to leave us a review. Let us know what you think about the conversation we're going to be having up. Today we have a special guest. He goes by the name of Willie Mays. He's also on Instagram. We'll put his Instagram handle on under the show notes. But he also goes by the name of Pastor Willie Mays, and he hails from Georgia. Pastor Willie Mays, would you like to say hello?
Hello, my friends. It's so nice to be here. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me on the show today.
All right, man. And you're out of, Georgia?
Georgia, Douglasville, Georgia, right now to be exact. Douglasville, Georgia for the last 13 years.
Georgia. All right, so where were you before Georgia?
So before Georgia, I was in Michigan. But, I was in Michigan, I had Georgia on my mind. Every time winter came around, Georgia was on my mind.
You know what's funny about you saying that? There's a sign when you're driving to Georgia that says Georgia on my mind. And when I went and I visited one time, I got out the car, pulled on the highway, and took a picture. So you had Georgia on your mind.
Man, I'm telling you, every winter I was having Georgia on my mind as a young guy growing up in Michigan. It was cool, you liked the snow, and it was fun. And the older I got, the more I realized I didn't want to be in that anymore. And so now getting this cold weather here in metro Atlanta and talking about snow tonight and tomorrow, it's giving me some flashbacks that I don't want to have.
Man, that's good. I always, Georgia's on my bucket list of places that I want to live in my lifetime. But
Sure.
I've never been able to make the urge, man. I've done every other place that I wanted to live, but I haven't did Georgia yet. Isn't that crazy?
It is, and it's funny. I remember before I moved here, I always used to have a cousin, and she would always tell me, she said, living in the South is just easier on you. So I got to tell you, living in Georgia is just easier on you.
That's good, especially y'all. I know the food is good out there too.
Oh man, you got to be careful because man, I tell you what, before you know it, you can be overeating and find yourself having to get to the gym more than you really plan to. I'm telling you, everywhere is great eating in Georgia.
That's really funny.
Oh yeah.
All right, so let's get into it. I know you. I've actually been to Georgia. I forget who invited me or how we ended up there. It may have been a business relationship, but I have visited your church. But a lot of times when we bring individuals of the ministry here on the podcast, our listeners also want to know, like, what were you before you were in the ministry? Like, what were you before you were a pastor? What were you? What was your life like?
Interesting. Very interesting question. So before I actually got into ministry, I was an engineer by trade, electrical engineer. And I've done engineering for years for General Motors, Whirlpool Corporation, Yamaha Corporation. And it was just strangely enough, I kind of thought that would be it as far as what I would be doing. But, even in the midst of doing it, how sometimes you can be doing things, but at the same time you feel like there's more you should be doing. And what you're doing is just not meeting that need of fulfillment of saying, man, I'm giving everything I should be doing. And it was kind of those moments that said, man, is engineering all of your purpose? Not is it a part of it, but is it all of your purpose? I don't want to leave any stones unturned. And that was really kind of what I began to start thinking about and dealing with. And so what I did, I just kind of started doing some ministry kind of softly, as I would say it, kind of soft ministry. And soft ministry just became hard ministry, hard nonstop, going at it. And I've been doing it ever since. And don't get me wrong, I still got that technical, geeky side that I still like to have done. But, man, ministry is a heart call, man.
Man, that's interesting. Now, at that moment, because I know growing up, and I grew up. I don't know if I'm considered growing up in the church, but I went to church a lot. I was on the usher, I was an usher. I was in the choir. But I'm trying to figure out, we always play around with some kids and some youth, and we say, oh, man, that's going to be a pastor right there. Oh, he's going to be in the he's
Yeah.
going to be in the ministry. It's a two-part question. The first question is, were you that kid growing up where they said, oh, he's going to be a pastor? And the punchline to the question is, what were some of the signs that you absolutely knew when you asked yourself that question as an engineer? Is this what I'm here? Is this what makes me whole? Is this my whole thing? Like, what were some signs that you looked at internally was like, well, check. So could you help us out with that?
Sure, man. That's a great question. Kind of first off, in the first question, I wasn't that kid. I grew up in the church, obviously, maybe kind of obviously. Really these days, I guess you really never know if a person's growing up in the church or not. But I grew up in the church, and in the midst of growing up, I wasn't that kid that everybody looked at, oh, yeah, he's certainly going to be a pastor ministry kind of kid. Matter of fact, and I'm not going to share it just because I want to keep this part, but I had a nickname that if I told people, nobody would ever guess that was it. And I was talking to a friend of mine last night on the phone, and he called me by that name, and I laughed. I said, brother, I said, whenever I hear that, no matter where I am, I know there's somebody that knows me before Christ, before coming in and growing up, and that's that name. And anybody that would hear this show, they could be sitting there listening and say, oh, yeah, I know exactly what he's talking about. And so I wasn't that guy. And, some of those defining moments is that it's not that I was necessarily passionate about preaching as I was passionate about helping people. And it was being able to pour into people and helping people find their purpose and define their purpose that really kind of led me into saying, man, there's a platform to be able to help people. And that was really the call in the ministry. And my preaching style was so much different than what most people heard, especially growing up in what we would call, quote unquote, the black church. I wasn't the hooper. I wasn't the one that was going to sound good. I was the one that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, you remember what I said. And it was helping you to become a better person. It was challenging you to become not just a good man, but a role model man. It was challenging you not to just become somebody that had kids, but a father that other fathers said, I want to be like you. And it was those kind of moments and doing those kind of things that said, this is where I want to be at. This is where I really want to pour into people. And that's really kind of how I got into it. I wanted to be somebody that made an impact. And for me, my goal was to say, if I couldn't leave a legacy, something that was here even after I was gone, was I really doing my part?
Wow. That was powerful. Now, here's a question for you. Was your ministry harder, or was your calling harder when you first got started, or is it harder today?
Wow. Out of all the questions, I think that's the first time I've ever been asked that. I think when I first started, it had its big challenges, but now I'm seeing those challenges that, it's kind of like with money, right? Everybody has money, so to speak. Everybody deals with money, so everybody thinks they know what it takes. Until you really get money, it's one thing to start dealing in the thousands, but when you're dealing in the millions, that's a totally different thing. And so, to me, when I look at that question, it's one thing when you're getting started because everybody has their starting moment. But when you get to doing something where you've been invested heavily in money and soul and what you do for over 20 years, you got to change the game to still be doing that thing. It's kind of like you're dating a woman. You can date and start off dating a woman and you can impress her because you're giving her lines that she's never heard from you. But after you've been with her for 20, 30 years, you got to really be coming with it because you can't give her the same line you were giving her 20 years ago and think she's going to be impressed. And it's really the same thing with ministry. When you got people that's been with you for that long, you really got to be doing something for them to say, yes, this is still the one I got to be following. I want to be following. And so I find it now that I'm starting to look more at the smaller group and really investing into people. And so now I'm looking at saying, instead of just leading people, I'm trying to lead leaders. And those leaders will then make an impact to lead people.
Man, that's really good, man. And I just want to make this quick. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, I know some of y'all don't be just listening to me when you're just sitting at a table taking notes. So I know some of y'all are probably surfing online right now. I wanted to make sure that you go and hold on one sec. I got it. I know it's like Purpose Builder, but I'm gonna get it. The Purpose Builder. Check them out on Instagram. You guys know how I do. Like, some of you are been fighting, like, man, you get at these points and you're like, social media is too much. I got to take a vacation. I got to take a break. Now, if you have it for your own religious reasons, you got to get away from social media. That's what your religion says. I'm not going to hold you there. But I will say, if you're doing that for personal issues, I keep telling you guys this. It's not social media. It's the people you have connected with on your social media, the people that's on your timeline. You come to pages like I give you on this podcast, you could take a vacation on these people's pages. All right. So again, this is, you guys know where to check me out, but also check out, Willie Mays here, the Purpose Builder on Instagram. Hit the follow button, connect with him, see what he's got going on. And, that's that little segment right there. Now, here's another question we got for you, Pastor Willie Mays.
Sure.
Here it is. I recently, are you familiar with Les Brown?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, excellent. So I recently had him on the show, and he said a quote or a statistic that I never heard before.
Okay.
He said that church attendance right now is at about 15%.
Uh-huh.
Is that true?
I think it's true across the board. I've talked to a number of pastors where it's true across the board. And, for a number, I think it's because what we're just talking about, the longer you get into it, you got to be fluid and willing to be able to be a change from what you're doing, because what we've done, 10, 15 years ago doesn't work today. Shucks, what we done 5 years ago doesn't work today. And so it is true all the way across the board. And what's interesting is that, for me, when I hit 20 years of ministry, I actually tried to retire. And this was a little over a year ago. I closed the church. For a year I've been thinking, praying about this. I closed the church, and I told the members, I said, hey, you know what? I just believe that I fulfill what God wanted me to do with this part of ministry. I think that this part is done. And we were actually still seeing a very, very huge incline. But I just really kind of feel like that's what God wanted me at. And so I tried to call myself staying retired. And it was kind of like after about 9 months, God was kind of, okay, are you done with what you thought you were going to do?
You done with your plan? You done with your plan?
You know the saying, you want to make God laugh, tell him what you're going to do. And that's what I did. God really laughed. And I tell you, from that time, the fight got real. And then listening to God, I realized at that point it was a change in focus that God wanted me to do. I focused on people and big ministry and trying to do what I thought that ministry was, and then I began to realize that I could make a stronger impact by taking leaders and sending leaders. And so I began to change my ministry. And so I still pastor church. I went right back, opened back up, and I tried to set up so that I could be small again. And I made it so that I could only have so many chairs in, and people still come in. But the point is that I changed, and I changed to a leadership platform because I realized that the next wave of people and individuals as to what was going to be taking place was not just leadership in the church. People didn't want to go to work and have the same job for 20, 30 years, getting master's and doctorate degrees and still not getting promotion. People didn't want to open up the beauty and barber shop and that was as far as they went to. And so I changed my focus and